Hey, what's going on, guys? Welcome to another episode of Prep Life. If I look tired, it's because I am tired. I just get off the road. I have no complaints, by the way. No complaints. But I am tired. I'm exhausted. I came off the road after a long trip, both in Kalispell, Montana, and San Diego. You guys know that this book, Prepared, comes out. It's a manual for surviving worst-case scenarios. Comes out June 6th. I gave an early manuscript copy to Jocko, and Jocko tabbed it, highlighted it, and wrote in it and said, hey, man, I want to go over the book with you on a podcast. So I flew out, and we spent 4 hours talking about it. I am humbled and honored by that kind of opportunity. I mean, it's something I'm really passionate about, and to do it so detail-oriented was amazing. And I expect nothing less of Jocko. This whole idea of discipline is freedom, this idea of taking extreme ownership, he's somebody who lives by that. Went from there straight to Salt Lake City, did like a 3-hour layover, and then flew straight to Kalispell, Montana for an afternoon preparedness seminar at Black Rifle Coffee, Kalispell, Montana, which is Andy's place, and had another 100 people come in. It was amazing. New faces, built a lot of relationships, and then went straight into a personal security class. Now, I started personal security several years ago off the idea called Decision Point. The idea with Decision Point was not a lot of people are trained in the decision-making protocol or taking their experiences, taking their training, and taking their triggers and understanding how they're supposed to operate under stress, especially when making a decision like taking a human life, right? Defending their life and potentially using deadly force. It is very important and I think negligent that we don't focus on that more. I mean, I am dumbfounded by every single personal security class that I do, where I step back and I go, my God, we know nothing about the understanding of human behavior, and this course gets people closer to understanding exactly how it's going to work. It's not going to be running the gauntlet, shooting paper and still. It's not that easy. It is more complex. There are factors. I always like to share an after-action review point, a lesson learned with you, and I'll share the most prominent one that I learned. This weekend, Casey, my training director, his wife Erica, Andy and Leah Stumpf, and Nelson, a local sheriff deputy, we all trained and we all did the assistant instruction. What I was dumbfounded by was every single scenario, I use the audience, which is the students, to judge the decisions made by the person who's in the gauntlet, the person who's in the arena, who's being assessed and watched and observed. I always use them as a jury of peers and say, was it justified or was it not? And I was taken back by how many people in this scenario thought it was completely justified. And they spoke to the narrative. They said, I was in fear of my life, and they said all the things. But then when you reflected it back to the peers who observed the whole thing go down in detail, they were taken back and said it wasn't justified. Overwhelmingly, most of the scenarios unfolded that way. And a lot of arrogant people would say, well, that's not how I would roll. Trust me, we have all walks of life, from professional to amateurs, from people who have plenty of experiences to none, and there is not one common correlation translating to good outcome. Because if you're elevated by stress or not, and you make a sound decision or not, there always is a variable that will lean on the side of justified versus not. Let me give you a prime example. We had a student and the student's girlfriend participate. A lot of students who are spouses who love each other will weigh heavy in the favor of protecting the ones they love, as expected, like a mama bear would do for their child, or like a father would do for their child, like I would do for my child. So they're emotionally biased. Now, the reason that matters is because when a person interdicts a woman and says, hey, come here, they don't assault them. They don't even indicate to them that they're a threat of violence besides the movement towards them. And then the husband steps in and kills the bad guy because he thinks he's bad because he got too close. they will argue to the death of them that what they did was justified. Except that's not what matters. I'm not the judge. The judge will be in a court of law, and the peers likely, depending on how that is charged and how that is prosecuted, will be the judge of that. So it's not cut and dry, black and white. It's not how it works. You need to be exposed to those triggers, to those experiences, to that trauma, and you need to see how you operate under stress, which is the most important aspect of personal security. So important, that day, at the end of that day, we talked about it as a team and said, hey, we need to do another one of these. So we're doing one June 10th. So you can sign up right now at philcraftssurvival.com on June 10th. June 9th, I come in for a Stop the Bleed class. June 10th, I do a personal security class. The afternoon, I do a book signing and book release party. And then the next day, I do a leadership seminar with Andy and Jared Taylor from Black Rifle Coffee. At the same time, Casey and Nelson are teaching a pistol course. We're going all out. This is what we're getting accomplished. I do want to give you one last update. Provo was approved. So I think I said that, and I said that right at the indication that it was getting approved, but now it's official. We are moving in July 1. We will be grand opening sometime in August, and it will be all the things. Retail, jiu-jitsu. Hopefully I can get Greg Lappin to come in and be the black belt who is teaching as the professor there. 5,000 square foot of mats. Fitness. We have Devin and his wife from Tactical Cowboy who will be doing the health and wellness and physical fitness component of it. 3,500 square foot of that. Hot sauna, cold plunge, all the things. Turnkey Preparedness Institute. We're calling it, we're reactivating the tribe. So this will be Firebase Provo, and it will be all the things, including CQHD, Close Quarters Home Defense. We are building a shoot house, a sim shoot house on the back end of this business. 19,000 square foot, by the way. 19,000 square foot. For context, we are at about 6,200 square foot in Heber City. We're moving to 19,000 square foot. In fact, if you want to be a sponsor, you guys can be sponsors. Hit us up at mike.philcraft@gmail.com if you want to sponsor the mats, if you want to sponsor supplements, whatever that is. Hit us up and let us know, especially if you're a local business, because we want to support local business. That course is already up, set for August, which is all the home defense considerations for moving through your house and clearing your space, moving to a crisis point, which is very different than a direct action raid, right? You know everything in the layout of your house. You know the sounds. You know the walls. You know where your children sleep. So it's very different considerations. I'm teaching the first close quarters CQ home defense class in Provo in August. And again, it's available at philcraftsurvival.com. Enough about the business. Let's talk about the news. The first thing I want to talk about is this border crisis. Now, today, I checked the news. Not even in the news. Not one story or article in the three main mainstream media outlets are even talking about this. Why? Because it was politically driven. But it's still a huge, significant national security, humanitarian, border patrol issue. Because Border Patrol is taking the brunt of all these issues. The head of Border Patrol comes out and says, there are significant problems. Our border is not secure. They need help. The Department of Homeland Security secretary comes out and says, I don't agree with that assessment. And it's like, what? So you don't agree with the ground truth of the people on the ground, including the supervisor in charge of all the guys on the ground who live it day to day. The men and women of Border Patrol every single day deal with that. And you're okay with just calling him out and saying, I don't agree with that assessment. That's not what's going on while you sit in your political office. Like, that's a problem. So I wanted to know more about the ground truth because, to be honest, it's confusing. Who the hell knows who to believe and what to believe? Now the news as of yesterday was reporting, oh, it's not that big of a deal anymore because the numbers are cut in half. Well, the numbers of 10,000 now to 5,000 is still an issue. Like 5,000 people illegally crossing into the country, whatever percentage of them is seeking asylum, and then being pushed out into the country saying, yeah, okay, we're going to put you on parole, and you have 6 months to 4 years to come in and actually report to us that you're in the country and then go through the process is bizarro world. That is a huge national security threat. Anyways, it's complicated. So what I did for the first time is we did an audible version of this show, Prep Life, available through the RSS feed wherever podcasts are found, but it's not a podcast. And we interviewed Vince Vargas, who is a guy who did 7 years in Border Patrol, was in BORTAC, former Army Ranger, now he's an actor, and he was on the border for about 48 to 72 hours, reporting from the front line, talking to his former peers in Border Patrol, and getting to the ground truth. So I'm going to roll a little bit of that so you get a little bit of talking points and some education, and then we'll get back to it. So here we go. They see you talking about the border and like, well, what do you know about border? It's like, how about you get some context before you start criticizing people? We posted on it recently, and I was taken back too by the divisive nature. I mean, social media is a cesspool of that, but especially the division politically, because you're choosing a side depending on what side of the fence you fall on. And this is a systemic issue in our country because we're the best country on the planet. A lot of people want to come here. We both come from families of immigrants, and telling that story about how to do it the right way and what's the controversy, it's a big mess.
Yeah, it's one of the most divisive conversations we've had in the past 4, 5, 6 years. And as the political parties kind of shift, the conversation gets louder, right? And right now, we're coming into another year soon to be voting, and that's going to be the main subject of everybody's political party race, right? Like, how are you going to fix immigration? How are you going to fix this? And it's kind of why people have to choose a side and why they're so emotionally invested in everything happening on the border. And you have kind of both sides. You'll have someone saying, close the borders, no one comes in. And then the other side, you'll have, let them all come in, or let them all come in and give them everything. And so, there's both of those have some validity to it, but the truth is the answer is going to be somewhere in the middle. You know what I mean? And how to articulate that in a way where people can digest it is what is not happening. There's not enough information out there or education that's not pulling people to a bias left or right. And so that's why I went down to the border myself to kind of explain what's happening with Title 42. And doing my own research, going down to the border, talking with Border Patrol agents, understanding why the massive influx and all that. And my job now is to kind of just explain it to others, to hopefully give more information on the subject so that people won't be so emotionally invested in it to the point where they want to cause arguments instead of have a discussion.
Yeah, it's like if you want to live a prep life, an informed life is the life that you live, and picking the proper people that you're going to listen to. A lot of the media that I get online is on YouTube, because I'm watching people that are not supported by a massive conglomerate or corporation that's swaying the narrative a certain way, as we've seen that kind of unravel recently with Tucker Carlson and even Don Lemon on the CNN side, on the left side. Yeah. Let's get into the ground truth. So you went there on the border, and we have this disparity of Title 42 kind of transitioning into Title 8. When we look at those two things for the layman, for somebody who doesn't understand what the hell that is, can you explain that?
Yeah, Title 42 was a health and safety act that was implemented during COVID to not allow immigration or illegal immigration to come across the border easily, because it was the way of the CDC protecting us from COVID. They didn't want the mass spread of the pandemic, right? And so they implemented Title 42. Title 42 was an agreement with Mexico, and it was supposed to, once they come across illegally, we were going to process them and send them back to Mexico. What happened during Title 42 was a massive influx. What happens with illegal immigration is like dissemination of information. There's a lot of information being told down south or throughout all the other exotic countries that lets them know, here's what's happening on the border. And once they found out Title 42 was happening, they thought, here's our chance to just kind of influx, because so many people came to America at that time that it actually broke our system even worse, right? Our system's already broken, but there was nowhere to put people, right? So you saw massive influxes where most patrol stations can hold up to 200 to 300 individuals. They were having thousands. And so from that thousands, you process them. And there's another conversation here because people are like, they're just, well, this is the process. You put them through fingerprints and pictures, and then you get their biodata information, whatever it is, right? And then they're in the system. And it's called an ident system, which is the same thing like what FBI would use or anyone else. And so that's how we kind of monitor them. But they were doing this to a point where now what? Where if so many people, how do you fix this? Well, from higher ups, from Mayorkas, right? He was the Secretary of like Homeland Security. He said, okay, well, whatever happened in their world, right? They decided to let's just let them come in as of now because there's so many. They didn't know what to do. I'm not saying this is the right answer. I'm saying this is what happened.
Yeah.
So they started to allow them to process them and then allow them to be given their parole, which is a kind of called a notice to appear, an NTA paperwork, which would say come back in 6 months, or there's some that are getting 4 years, 5 years down the road, which again,
because the waiting line, because
right,
there's so many
it's
people.
so many people.
Yeah.
That's like then an immigration judge will make a determination on your case. But in doing that, that obviously upset a lot of people because now it's almost like a catch and release. Like the term catch and release is probably a little too loose of a term to use, but essentially they're coming in, we're processing them, and it's such an influx of people and personnel. There is no system that is put into place for us to funnel this. There's nothing we have that can house illegal immigration besides prisons or private prisons or ICE facilities, but there's not enough. And so what the decision was made was, well, let's just process them, give them an NTA, and they'll come back and we'll get them through their immigration process. And that was the biggest controversy, what was happening. It wasn't supposed to be like that, but since there was such a massive influx, it turned into that.
All right, back to it. Eye-opening, right? I mean, this is eye-opening. He expresses and gives his opinion on it. He's not politically driven. He's just reporting to the ground truth. That is a longer interview. It's available right now in the link down below. Make sure you hit that up. I want to report a little bit on Illinois because Illinois right now is going through some issues dealing with gun control. Surprised. If you didn't know, a new mayor of Chicago exists right now dealing with an epidemic of black-on-black violence. You know what the epidemic when it comes to guns is? Black children killing black children in the inner city with pistols. Not AR-15s, not AK-47s, but right now the Supreme Court allows Illinois assault weapons ban to take effect. According to the Fox News, Illinois ban will remain in effect while lower courts consider its constitutional status. Now, I will say the Supreme Court has been weighing in favor of the Constitution, thank God, because they've been turning a lot of these illegal constitutional infringements around. But the U.S. Supreme Court allowed Illinois ban on assault weapons to take effect temporarily on Wednesday. The ruling allows the Illinois law to remain in effect while lower courts deliberate on constitutional status. The Seventh Court of Appeals, the Illinois bans the sale of new possession of semi-automatic assault weapons. So if you are in Illinois right now and you have one, you're good. But if you don't, you won't be able to get them. And those who already legally own such weapons would not have to turn them in, but you would have to report them to the state police. So you would have to report to the state police that you're in possession of weapons. That is the biggest issue I have with all of this, because the assault weapons ban is in 11 states currently, but the fact that you want me to register now with a legally purchased firearm as a law-abiding citizen is ludicrous. The court did not offer an explanation for its Wednesday decision, and there is no notes of dissent. The National Foundation for Gun Rights, a legal group associated with the gun store that requested an injunction, expressed disappointment with Wednesday's ruling. Any action the Supreme Court would have taken at this point would have only been temporary and not on the merits of the case itself, says the Seventh Circuit rules against us. The U.S. Court of Appeals, the Seventh Circuit, is currently considering the case. Illinois passed the Protect Illinois Communities Act on January 10th, banning the sale, purchase, manufacture, delivery, and importation of assault weapons and large-capacity magazines, with exceptions for law enforcement, military members, and certain other professionals with firearm training. The legislation specifically names AR-15s and AK-47s. So we don't use facts, we don't use studies, we don't use proof of a national assault weapons ban that didn't work. As demonstrated through the studies of, by the way, left-leaning organizations and educational institutes, including many academic sources that are Ivy League leftist, that identify that it didn't do anything to fix any problems. In fact, the crime rates and statistics all have gone up in Chicago and in Illinois across the board. So what is this going to do? It's only going to infringe more on your constitutional rights. But here's what I wanted to say, because this is important to note. A gun store owner is the one who turned this around and requested an injunction. A gun store owner. So while we have many people in our culture grifting, the idea of peddling pettiness, or talking crap on social media, virtue signaling their truth, you have people in the country who are absolutely doing the right thing, getting things accomplished. So you could talk about it or you could be about it. This gun store owner in Illinois is the one who filed the injunction that got this appeal process going, because that's what you do when you want to get something done right. It's like my Fieldcraft employees who are standing with protest signs when we're protesting the absence of an ordinance to protect law-abiding citizens in this state and in this county specifically from being radically enforced upon unconstitutional laws, right? So you could make up your law, but if the sheriff has an ordinance in place, not just a memorandum, but an ordinance in place, then you don't have to worry about it in your specific county. When I started Fieldcraft Survival in California, in a small town called Ione, California, which is Amador County, the sheriff did the same. Now, problem was I was a domestic terrorist anywhere I went in that state outside of Amador County, but we need that kind of action to get things done in our backyard. So you could talk about it, you could make comments about it, you could run your mouth, or you could be about it. Thank God for this guy not being a grifter and actually getting something accomplished. I saw this Miller Lite commercial, and there's a whole bunch of people up in arms about the Miller Lite commercial. Now, to be fair, I don't know anything about it. You could leave the comments down below to educate me, but I think it was like a woman walking around talking about women and women's rights or whatever. That's good. I mean, why a beer company is worried about political issues at all and not like drinking beer, it kind of dumbfounds me, but I think they were taking the opposite stance. But some people are like boycotting, let's boycott Miller Lite now. It's like, but they are doing the opposite. It's like an actual woman. And then people are like, well, they're following suit. It's like, just shut up. You don't like the beer. Do you have to tell everybody in the world about it? Does your entire account have to talk about it? Do you have to get people on your team? It's like, what the hell are you doing? Do you have a job? Do you have kids to raise? Like, these grifters are mind-blowing. Thank God we have people like this gun store owner who's willing to step up and get something accomplished. Lastly, I want to talk about this guy. It just was reported to me today. A guy who was a former Army veteran, former Green Beret, was killed in a blast in Ukraine. I'll read the report. It's breaking news. A retired U.S. military veteran from Idaho helping Ukraine combat Russians' invasion is believed to have been killed on the front lines. Nick Mamer, 45, of Boise, had for the last years been training civilian volunteers in Ukraine's ongoing effort to defend its borders. Mamer, a former Army Green Beret, died when a Russian artillery shell destroyed a building outside of Bakhmut, according to Perry Blackburn, who helped recruit Mamer to Kiev last May. From what I understand, he was providing them with firsthand training in that area so that they could continue to do the fight, and he got caught behind enemy lines. A video posted Tuesday by a pro-Russian military blogger on Telegram shows a guy, chief of the Russian private military company Wagner, surveying a body in what appears to be Bakhmut. CNN reported U.S. documents belonging to Mamer appear to be shown in the video. Blackburn and Mamer's uncle, Paul Mamer, each identified the body in the video as Mamer's. They told the Statesman on Tuesday. He never let anything in front of him stop his goals, Paul Mamer told the Statesman by phone. He persevered through a lot in his he persevered through a lot in his life. Had the utmost respect for him. A lot of people can learn from who he was and what he had accomplished. In 45 years, he lived a lot. Russia stepped up shelling in the past days, and there's a picture of him teaching right here. Retired U.S. Army veteran Nick Mamer Wright of Boise and retired U.S. Army Lieutenant Colonel Perry Blackburn left, pictured in Ukraine. Look, here's what I'll say. This dude's a hero, and he's a patriot. He stands for the values that America stands for. Now, I've been adamantly against the campaign in Ukraine specifically for the absence of political understanding of what the hell's happening. Because I served 5 rotations in Iraq, 2 in Afghanistan, and a few others throughout the globe on behalf of not understanding what the hell's going on the ground. We lost ourselves. We got involved in Iraq, and we shouldn't have got involved in Iraq. We got involved in Libya, and we shouldn't have gotten involved in Libya, but we want to poke and prod. But that doesn't mean that there's not good Americans doing good things across the globe helping people out. And that's what he did. He sacrificed his life, and he's a freaking hero. While other people's grift about it, run their mouth about it, this dude's out getting it done, and that's what the foundation of America is based on. People's willingness to live free and protect and preserve that freedom no matter what the cost, even if it means sacrificing your life. So big shout out to his family. I'm praying, and his family is bearing the brunt of all these things that are happening right now in their lives, but the sacrifice was not in vain. He was helping people directly on the ground. Despite all the politics involved, there are good Americans helping people on the ground, and that's important. That's important as an American to get it done. Guys, I appreciate you. A lot of things going on. About to head out to Overland Expo. Hope to see you there. If you're coming out, come visit us. We are both at the Expedition Overland booth, and we have our own booth by the motorcycles, a prime vendor booth. Come out and see the rigs. Come shake hands. Come learn about preparedness and live your prep life. Till next time. Peace out, guys.